I've tried to ask the question, why is forgiveness so difficult? So intuitively, I think every human being, whatever their background, sort of knows it's a good idea. I've been in Christian ministry 30 years, and I've genuinely only really thought of quitting the ministry, not Jesus, but the ministry twice in that time, genuinely. And it was on the issue of unforgiveness. And I knew I should, and yet I convinced myself that I could not forgive until the Holy Spirit, in his own inimitable, glorious way, changed one word and said, no, it's not that you sort of can't forgive, it's that you won't forgive. Can I say this? Really, don't throw anything at me, right? Just wait till I finish the sentence. It is relatively easy to forgive. It is much more difficult to reconcile. But many of us struggle even to get to the place of forgiveness because we're nervous about what reconciliation looks like. And I found that immensely difficult as a pastor, as a father, as a husband, as a human being. When my youngest daughter was a little bit younger, she was out playing in the garden with her friends, and we heard a terrible commotion, squealing, crying. She came running in, and she held up her finger. She'd cut her finger in the garden, and there was blood. And of course, to a young child, blood, it's serious. And so my wife lifted her up, cleaned off the blood, and it was just a little tiny cut. But, you know, to a child, it was a big thing. And so my wife put a gorgeous little plaster, pink plaster, on her finger, and off she went. When she went into the garden, she sort of played very gingerly. So she was sort of like the pink sort of plaster was being waved in the air to show her friends, don't touch the finger, leave the finger alone. After a little while playing with her friends, she completely forgot about the finger and just carried on playing and had an amazing time for about another hour or so in the garden. Came back in. I was sitting in the living room. She came like a whirlwind through the dining room from the garden, through the dining room into the living room. And as she was sort of hurtling towards the stairs to go upstairs, I said to her, darling, how's your finger? She went, ooh. Oh, it's so painful. All right? And you know, right there I had a bit of a moment that when she took her eyes off the pain, she was able to engage in the world around her. And there is an incredible tragic story in the Gospels of a woman who so hated a man of God that when given a blank check in up to half the kingdom of King Herod, she made a choice for his head. And it says of her, it says, she held a grudge, nursed the grudge against him. I've come to the conclusion that humans aren't equipped for vengeance. Yeah. That's why God says don't do it. Not because we can't, but because we're really bad at it. Yeah. And because even when we do it, it doesn't answer the question. The worst moments in my life have been, whether it's with my wife, not settling an argument before we go to bed, being grumpy all night, falling out with my children, because I wanted them to be something and they're not matching up, falling out with members of my congregation, falling out with neighbors. All of those things we're prone to because there's something dark within us, wants to hang on, even though we know it's bad for us. And that's why God says to us, leave vengeance to me. If you take the law into your own hands, this will kill you, it will destroy you. And the hardest thing for me has been to release my control over the situation and say, okay, I'm going to place this in hands of God. And by placing it in hands of God, here's what we're not doing. Oh, Jesus, please kill them. Thank you. It's, Lord, I'm giving them to you. You do whatever you want. And if you choose to bless them, that's okay. And here's the last thing I'll say. The acid test for me as to whether I've truly forgiven someone or not. It's two things. Number one, can I sincerely pray for them? So when nobody's looking, no lights, no band, only Jesus is listening. If I can honestly, in that naked moment, say, Lord, bless them, I know I'm free. Right? May not feel like it, but I know I'm free. And here's the second difficult bit, and I haven't always done this bit very well. But then if I can move from praying for them to somehow making some form of physical connection, if that's possible and practical. It's not always possible, not always practical, but if it is, and I can take a step of generosity towards them, something breaks. It frees me from the grip of the grudge, and it sets me free. I would love to say to you, I'm a world expert at that, but I'm really not. I'm still learning, and every single day I have to make a conscious decision to let things go. Every day. But I've found if I can kneel before the Father and in my broken nakedness say, Lord, bless them, then I sort of get off my knees freer than I got down on them.